Hi everyone, my name is Gabby Llanillo, and today I'm here to talk about quality leadership and what it means to drive and define what good looks like. So, a little bit about me. I am currently a QA supervisor at Riot Games, working on Valorant. For the last 2 years now, I've been a QA supervisor, but before that, I actually started out as a QA engineer. And so now I'm just managing engineers as well as like helping them grow into whether that's the manager track or going into the principal track. Previous to that, I was at Naughty Dog for about 3 years. I had worked on The Last of Us Part 2, and before that, I was at Square Enix working on Dragon Quest XI and also Idea Factory, where I had helped with some localization on a project called Death and Request. Overall, I've had about 6 years of game industry and QA experience, so most of the experience that I'll be talking about will be based on projects I've worked on and what I've learned throughout my couple of years in the industry now. So I assume everyone knows what QA or quality assurance is. These are pretty much the unsung heroes of the industry, and definitely not just people who play video games all day, despite that kind of being the first thought that most of my family has when I tell them about what I do for a job. But I'm not really here to talk about what QA is or what they do, but rather what QA can be and how we can grow the potential of the QA teams that you work with. So let's start with the question of how it is you define quality. Another question or phrase that people put this to is, what does good look like? So we're going to go through different projects and how I've basically done just this. Let's start with Dragon Quest XI. This was the first game that I had worked on. It is a Japanese RPG. I put in a ton of different hours into it, and it was my first QA job and localization gig, and it lasted about 6 months. So the type of issues that we looked for in this particular role were mostly text-based, since it was a localization QA job to begin with. These were anything from typos, grammar, incorrect sentence structures, capitalization, and basically just making sure the game was translated in all of its context in English and the other languages that we were also helping translate on the side too. But how we were able to elevate that and kind of up the level of quality was through our localizing of haikus, which are actually a huge part of the game. They have quite a few puns and rhymes as well. And the localization team basically wanted to preserve all of these in English. And so that kind of helped the QA team with adding a little bit more into the game by pitching the haikus that we've come up with, um, knowing like the context of the game and seeing whose haiku basically got picked and put into the game. So that was like a pretty fun little thing that we got to add on top of just like testing and pointing out um, all of the text-based issues. Because of this, we actually had pretty good reviews on the localization because just the writing was really thought of, and the fact that we wanted to preserve something as small as the haikus just like goes to show how you can have your QA team be a little bit more involved in like the localizing process. So what actually could happen if we defined the quality bar earlier? On The Last of Us Part 2, we actually did localization alongside different testing efforts. We had testers from different backgrounds, usually with native fluency, because we wanted to fix text and voice issues based on context. So, you know, different words could different mean different things in different cultures, and we wanted to make sure that we were doing right by all of these translations. So. Um, we also had testers help with voice acting since that was localized as well. So we reported issues that came with the tone or delivery of characters' lines. Um, some of our testers could say like, hey, this isn't exactly something we would say in our language, and suggest something that would better fit the context in their respective native languages. The outcome of this was that we wanted to make sure the um, localization was pretty much contextually accurate and wanted to minimize any potential legal issues. And this had a lot of high praise from fans around the world because they got to play it in their native language, and it felt less like a, oh, this has been a game just translated to English or whatever language it is that they were playing in, and more like it was deliberate and intentional. So that was just how it started, and how it was when I first joined the game. But this really took the level of quality to the next level, and just the standard approach that ensured that, in general, the game could be played in multiple languages. So how exactly did we define and drive quality for the rest of the game? Well, the team was broken down into a bunch of areas and disciplines, and we had these things called point of contacts that were assigned different areas and languages and disciplines. And so this was in order to split up the work and pretty much help everybody own an area of ownership and grow in their QA skills and just get a lot more trust from the rest of the team. Some of these things um, were different levels or areas of the game, or maybe features and systems. And as the point of contact, you're basically expected to own the quality for the area or the discipline, and work with all of the different departments like designers and environment artists, VFX artists, etc., that were working on said areas and disciplines to ensure that the quality was kept up to standard. I actually started out being the point of contact for one of the earliest levels in the game, which was Jackson Patrol. I don't know if anyone remembers when the first demo was playable, or that news outlets had reported on it, but I basically had to take the early iteration of a level and make sure the quality of it was at the level of like having a fully playable experience that wasn't only functional but also just enjoyable for the people who were going to play it at the event, and eventually, of course, like delivering that experience to players for the rest of the game. As the point of contact for this level, I wanted to make sure that we not only met the expectations for ourselves as a team delivering this experience, but also surpass the expectations that players had set for us, if that were possible. So the approach, aside from looking for straight functional issues, we had a emphasis in finding bugs in the smaller details. Because The Last of Us, as some of you might know, is very rooted in realism. So were some of the bugs that we were actually looking for. Uh, they were pretty much like very deep in the details. Some of those were just making sure that footsteps were appearing in the snow when you would walk through them. If snow were to fall from, or if whenever you touch a branch or brush up against it, we wanted to make sure that snow was falling from trees um, or leaves and things like that. We also wanted to make sure that blood was appearing well and correctly on clothes and or on a character's body, especially since you can go prone in this game. If you were to lay down in a puddle of blood, then Ellie should be covered in a puddle of blood. And also, same thing with rain and snow. We wanted to make sure that clothes were appearing wet, and just to add to the overall immersion of the game. So we also wanted to have like these smooth transitions in and out of cinematics, or animations like IGCs, since usually like loading screens used to just take people out of like the immersion of the game. So it really just added to like making sure there was like a non-stop smooth experience. And these were the types of issues that QA had really focused on, especially towards the end when it came to polishing the game. So while finding like the straight functional issues were important, it was extremely valuable to give just as much attention into finding these issues in order to create the very cinematic experience that players got to experience. Yes. So when it came to development support, that was also something that we got to do as QA testers. These were basically tasks outside of general testing, and it usually involved design work. And having like the context of the level as the QA point of contact basically allowed me to contribute to helping fix the bugs in a more hands-on way, just because I had such um, deep familiarity with like the types of bugs that we were looking for and what exactly the designers wanted. So some of these examples were placing nav mesh for AI and making sure that NPCs don't go out of bounds or just like end up standing on tables and things like that if it wasn't what they were meant to do. Combat QA team also got to help place item pickups in places with context, of course. So, for example, like in this photo, um, it makes sense to find pills and bottles of alcohol in a pharmacy because that's usually where you'd find those things as opposed to finding them, I don't know, in a pet store. Or maybe you can find that, but not as much of a context that makes sense. So it was great that the design team had a lot of faith and trust in the combat QA team to kind of place items where they thought would make sense and where players were most likely to find these items. So we also got to help tag surfaces with different labels because just to give context there, like once a wall is kind of put into the game, you know, AI can kind of walk past it, but if we don't tag it as like a shoot through or a look through, then especially if we put like chain link fence art on it, then enemies wouldn't know exactly to look through that wall, and so it's just kind of like a wall to them. But we got to do that as well as QA, and so um, again, having like intimate knowledge of like the level helped us kind of put all of that together and made it more of just like a fun experience to fixing bugs and helping our designers with contributing to finishing the game. The outcome of all of this were basically the demo levels were a success, and it set the standard of quality for the rest of the game's development. My role as QA made me successful in doing these types of tasks because I knew exactly what types of bugs to look for. And as a huge fan of the first Last of Us game, I put myself in the player's shoes and basically thought of what further improvements to the player experience we could make and how else we could further immerse the players into our characters and the world that we were creating. Now that we've gone through some examples of what defining what quality or what good looks like in different projects and different um, examples of how that can be, let's talk about how we can expand and build confidence in actually determining what good looks like. So this is Valorant. For those who don't know, it's a team-based, free-to-play, first-person tactical shooter, and you play as different agents with a bunch of different abilities as a team. It is a games as a service type of game, and so it is continuously needing updates and use support in order to keep our players engaged. And it is free to play. So the challenge that I've had here is basically how do we deliver patches on a regular basis with new content that will engage our players. We want to consistently release content that will keep the players happy and engaged. And so this can come with a series of challenges, like making sure the new content doesn't disrupt the ecosystem or the meta, and also maintaining the balance of listening to player needs as well as knowing what we can and can't deliver to them. Um, and kind of communicating with our teams on like the bandwidth and what exactly is highest like player impact when it comes to knowing what to prioritize, since prioritization comes quite difficult when a lot of different issues and reports are being thrown your way. So when it came to my approach and the role as a quality lead, we also had something similar to Naughty Dog where we were given an area of ownership and the area or feature basically had a pod assigned to it, and this had like different engineers and producers and quality leads, and had their own way about getting their work done. And basically, as the quality lead, you had to align with production engineering on how to prioritize the work ahead and when you can kind of fit testing in. You also had to handle external vendors, as well as collaborate with other quality leads on shared features and things like that. And you also had to triage and escalate issues when it came to higher player impact, and give kind of a go or no go risk assessment before something went out into um, the ecosystem of players. So you're pretty much responsible for kind of pushing back against like the team when you think something isn't ready or needs a little bit more work, and it's just a little bit more, I guess, empowered than other types of QA roles I've had in the past. Another way that I actually do love to look at quality and isn't as common, um, at least I haven't been taught about it, is defining quality through DNI, which is diversity and inclusion. So I am a person with many different marginalized identities, so DNI is incredibly important to me and is the reason I wanted to get into games to begin with. Playing games that basically made me feel seen, made me want to do the same thing for other people, and being a part of a community and making a game to include representation of marginalized folks has been an incredible North Star for me, and pretty important for me to follow throughout the different projects that I've worked on. So um, it means a whole lot to me to work on projects that have high impact. And I think having like those shared experiences and putting them into games and can go quite a long way. And so while we can't always have that, since not everybody has shared experiences of the stories that we're trying to put forth on our players, we can rely on experts. So these are people who have maybe historical or anthropological knowledge of the community, or people who have those like lived experiences, and um, that you could source through like employee resource groups, through companies and things like that, or that you can like reach out to externally. So one of the things I actually got to do and was very proud of was helping the Valorant team with designing the Pride shirt one of the previous years. Basically, I hadn't seen Valorant spotlighted in Pride before, and so I wanted to make sure that we kind of got like our part of being spotlighted there. And so I got to work with like the art teams and ensuring the art style was correct and that we were had the most like up to date rainbow flag at the time. And so that's just like a different way of looking at quality that I hadn't really thought of before. But it's really been like one of like the types of lenses that I look at quality now moving forward in my work. Another example that I've kind of contributed to helping with defining quality within DNI is giving some feedback on our agent Neon when she was in the process of being created. And Neon is basically a Filipino agent that hails from Manila. As a Filipino myself, I rarely saw a lot of people in me in games that I grew up playing, and so to have somebody like Neon be a featured agent and having her culture be celebrated by a game and a community meant super like highly to me, basically. And I also got to speak at Philippine colleges virtually and talk one-on-one with students who have attested to how Neon's representation like meant a whole lot to them. So um, that I think that's just like a really awesome result and part of the job of taking my shared experience and using that as part of like a QA lens. And so I think that's just like one of the many ways that you can put into your QA experiences moving forward. So overall, here are some of like my takeaways. One of them is, quality isn't just owned by QA, but by the entire team. Um, Investing and empowering your QA will actually enable them to define higher quality bars as opposed to just following, the A to B acceptance criteria on something, and will help them think a little bit more outside the box. Obviously, playing the games that you're working on is incredibly important because that'll help you connect to players and also helps develop confidence in defining what good would look like. Quality isn't just something that is solely defined by something working, but also whether the content is accurately executed. So um, I had touched on that with DNI specifically, and how you could use different outlooks and perspectives to better understand quality and help even identify a quality bar that you didn't have before. So um, that's basically just a quick um, and dirty way of looking at all the different ways that I've been able to improve my QA processes in different teams and just different ways to kind of look at quality. I hope that you gathered something from the talk, and whether that's just some fun background and game dev stories on games that you've played, or different ways to leverage and empower your QA within your teams, then that's great. So thank you so much for listening, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your conference. Have a good one. Thanks. Bye.